Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of a 3-part series. You can hear fireworks in the background. So my neighbors really like putting off fireworks. It is the 2nd of July. We have 2 days before the big thing. In the US, 4th of July means fireworks. So if you're not in the US, you might have to take a second to remember that part. But yeah, we are crazy about fireworks for 4th of July, Independence Day. It's an excuse to play with sparkly fire things. I don't really like doing them myself, but I love watching them. So it will be fun. But yeah, you'll hear some thumps in the background. That's just fireworks. So I'm going to cover legs 5, 6, and 7 and the FaceOff weekend in this video. And then the final video will be legs 8, 9, and 10 and my kind of wrap-up thoughts. So I won't spend too much time recapping how Amazing Readathon works. I talked a bit about that in the previous video. If you really want to know in more depth, watch a bunch of everybody else's wrap-ups and maybe check the announcement video if you want more information than that. But yeah, thankfully we're done. So I'm going to wrap up and move on to July. This is part of that process. So leg 5, we were going from Paris to Cape Town. So for this one, we needed a book with nature on the cover. I don't have the book I read for this one in print. It was an ARC from NetGalley of the new Jeff VanDermeer, book 4 in the Area X series or the Southern Reach series. It was a series that came out in an omnibus trilogy. So everybody that I know that reads this one knows it as the Area X trilogy. But it is now a 4-book series. So that should be exciting. Absolution is the name of it. It does not answer a lot of questions. And what it does answer, it replaces with new questions. So if you were hoping that it would make all the previous books make sense, kind of, sort of, but not really. Yeah, it's typical Jeff VanDermeer. It is supposed to leave you unsettled still at the end, and it does. But in a good way, and I think I gave it probably 4 stars. It wasn't a 5-star for me. I'm not really that keen on still being confused at the end of the book. But it wasn't bad, it just wasn't my style. And I know that one of my siblings is going to absolutely love it when she finally gets to read it. So that one was only 454 pages. So I'm pretty sure I took the boat to get to Cape Town. And I did some sightseeing. I only did 5 sightseeing in leg 5. And we came in last in leg 5. And I'm not surprised. I was not the only one who was starting to feel like giant books were a bit much and, went for something a bit more moderate for the city prompt. And I only actually finished 5 sightseeing, 1 for each level at least, which was originally my goal before we got the possibility of leveling up so that you could finish all the sightseeing and start over. When we started, that hadn't been stated yet, so I was kind of thinking if I had to space them out, I would do 1 from each level per leg. And I did that for leg 5. So for the 500 point prompt, I did a book with footnotes. I did The Dark Talent by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 5 in the Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarian series, which is middle grade and really cute, kind of a fantasy sci-fi crossover. So, yeah, that was fun, and it allowed me to read book 6 later on in another leg. Then the 400-point prompt, I did Nightflyers by George R.R. Martin. The 300-point prompt, I did Runtime by SB Divya. 200-point prompt was The Murder at the End of the World by... Oh, I know this author. We were just talking about him in sprints. I will put it in the description. But yeah, this is a current book everybody's starting to read, so you've seen it. And then the 100-point prompt I did, I read Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. So those were, Nightflyers was uses initials, George R.R. Martin. Runtime was for a book with sports in it. And The Murder at the End of the World was an isolated setting, definitely very isolated. Island, isolated from the rest of everybody. They think that they're the only humans left, or that they might be. It remains to be seen till you read it, what's actually going on. But there's reasons to doubt that assumption from the very beginning. But what is going on is very cleverly disguised for quite a ways. So that was a fun book. And then Pet was a friend recommendation from several people in our team that said that was just a really amazing book. And then somebody on Sprints also recommended it. Like, okay, I'll just go with that. So the funky thing about leg 5 is that this leg was concurrent with FaceOff weekend. So a lot of our team was not focused on doing sightseeing for this weekend. So they were focused on FaceOff books to earn travel bucks, the GRC bucks, not focusing on sightseeing to earn points. So it's not a surprise that we came in fourth. We really didn't have enough people to be able to split our team and do a lot of points and GRC at the same time, because we are one of the smaller teams. So not a surprise, but we did come in fourth, which is important because at the end of Face-Off weekend, we went into leg 6, and I'll come to that. I'm first going to just kind of list off what I read for Face-Off. There were a lot of them. I won't talk through all of them in detail because there were a lot of them. So I finished The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, A Lady's Guide to Etiquette and Murder by Dianne Freeman, this here. The Cosmic Junkman by Phillips. This is one of my favorites from the Face-Off, in an audiobook format, and I'm sure that I've seen it in print before. I don't remember if my sisters owned it or what, but I know I've seen this book before. I just don't have it in my shelves. I thought I did, though. But it was really good. Highly recommend if you like short sci-fi. Probably about 150, 175 page book. Forgotten World by Edmond Hamilton. Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey. That one was LGBTQ and sci-fi, and short, which was nice. The Watcher by the Threshold by John Buchan. This was a novella-length novel by the same author as 39 Steps. That's in a lot of book lists. I I finished Analog magazine for March of 1999. Dr. Ox's Experiment by Jules Verne. The House and the Brain by Edward Bulwer-Lytton. First time I've read anything by that author. I own a collection by him, but I've never really gotten to it. I have friends that like more classic literature that really love his stuff, so I enjoyed that one. I'll probably look up more of his stuff. For whatever readathon comes along where reading classics is more a thing, maybe. I finished The Last Drive by Rex Stout, a novella-length novel by the same author as does the Nero Wolfe series. This one was not Nero Wolfe, but you could tell it's kind of the same feel. Finished Asimov science fiction, August 1993. Which I had been going to do for a book with an animal on the cover, because it has a nice, cute panther on it. But I ended up finding something else for that. And The Pomegranate Seed by Edith Wharton. I think there was another short story that was usually published with Pomegranate Seed that I also found the audiobook for, which I did go and find the other audiobooks so that I could check off the one I found on Goodreads without too much effort. But the only one I wrote down was Pomegranate Seed, so I don't remember. Maybe Moving Finger. Something like that, but Moving Finger is Agatha Christie. Anyway, Edith Wharton. I've read a few of hers. Always a reliable classics author. The Birds by Daphne du Maurier just barely made the length cut. I think it's a 50-pager, somewhere in there, and the cutoff for FaceOff was 40 pages. So, something like that. But it was long enough, and was as long as what a lot of people were checking off. As I mentioned in the first video, due in part to my upbringing and the way our family did competitive reading, I have this little inner voice that says, "Oh, are you sure that's long enough to count?" every time I read anything short. So, this has been a learning experience for me, checking off shorter things, and it's okay, and no one's gonna yell at you because it's over the minimum pages. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was actually a sort of a source of anxiety for me all month. Just, oh my gosh, it's short. Yeah. I finished The Dead by James Joyce. I enjoyed this one. I think I gave it 4 stars. First time I've given anything by James Joyce, anything over about a 2, or maybe a 2.5. But I actually liked his short fiction, apparently. So I'll have to check out more of his short fiction and see if that continues to be the case. And then I finished Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu, which wasn't memorable. I may try it again. It had kind of Halloween-ish vibes, so I might try it again in October and see if it sticks any better. But right now, all I can tell you is I finished it. I didn't hate it, and it wasn't memorable. And that was how I finished off FaceOff. So that was getting us to the end of Leg 5. Leg 6 prompt dropped the next day. And no surprise, we came in 4th place in Leg 5. Not only that, in the week leading up to FaceOff, we were voting as teams for which team was going to have to do the Leg 6 prompt twice. As, you know, an extra challenge sabotaging another team. And the rest of the teams must have been afraid of sci-fi. I don't know why. Little old us, sweet and innocent, right? We didn't win Leg 1 or anything at all. Right? How could we possibly? So, yeah, we got voted for the team that had to do leg 6 twice. And because we lost leg 5, we had a penalty for coming in last in leg 5. So, not only did we have to do leg 6 twice, but the first of those books, the one that was the first leg 6, the actual leg 6 book, had to be over, is it 400 pages or 500 pages? Anyway, there was a page minimum that it had to be in order to count. Yeah, it wasn't over 500. I think it was 400. But anyway, it eliminated some of those shorter books that we might have read. I had books set aside for longer city prompt books anyway that I hadn't gotten to. And losing and having to do the U-turn energized some of us to insane performances of reading. So, while we were doing the whole voting, I mentioned, and a couple other people mentioned as well, the concept that depending on who you are and how you read, having to do leg 6 twice might not be such a bad thing if you're used to reading long books anyway. Because page count doesn't add to your points in Sightseeing. The only way reading a long book gets you more points is if you're using it for the city prompt. And if you have to do city prompt twice, the U-turn, the second one, you don't get to double it by flying, but you do get the points for the number of pages in that book. So you get to read a long book and get page count to matter for points. So instead of 10 books where page count matters, we had 11. It did mean that we had a few team members that had a hard time catching up, and that's where the penalty comes in and why it was a bad thing at all. But we had several team members that really milked this opportunity for all it was worth. I finished 2 really long books for leg 6. So my book that I doubled, and the prompt was a book with religion in it. So I did Shogun, and my book was literally falling apart, so I just let it and just, tore off the chunks of pages as I read them. So it is officially going in recycling now. It is not a book anymore. These fat books, when they're in paperback, don't survive very well. And it had already been taped together twice. So it's been read a few times. Not by me, though. This is my first time in Shogun. Definitely has a lot of religion. There's Catholic and Protestant colonist factions that show up in Japan. And the emperor is kind of letting them play off each other while being really uncomfortable about both Christian groups and their influence on Japan. Very much a book where religion plays a huge role, not even just a church or a monk somewhere in the story. This was all about religion. And it was 1,210 pages. Double that. This book won me 2,420 pages, or 20 points. So I definitely flew, got those points. And then we had the U-turn. So we had to do the same prompt, a book with religion in it, again. And it couldn't be doubled, but the page count still determined your points. Well, that's lovely, because I read Battlefield Earth by L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard is the Scientology guy. There's not as much religion in this book as one might think, but there's enough. And there's certainly an underlying idea of, where religion fits in their society as they're rebuilding society. I did not like this book particularly. The first 300 pages were actually really good. I was like, okay, I don't see why anybody's complaining about this. It's kind of fun. We're on a futuristic Earth where aliens have taken over. It's way in the future. So it's not a recognizable Earth. But aliens have showed up on Earth and are mining the planet for resources. There's a remnant human population, and the aliens somehow can't believe that the humans are what created the ruins of cities that are all over the planet. So there's some hard to believe bits in there, like they're not that dumb. Anyway, one of them captures a human because he thinks maybe they can use the humans to mine stuff. Because humans can breathe the air that we just have on this planet, and the aliens can't. So the humans can go into the mines without carrying any gases to breathe, and the gases that the aliens are carrying can cause explosions if they interact with the stuff they're trying to mine. Anyway, so he captures himself kind of a pet human. And teaches him language and all this stuff using a learning device. And then the human escapes and goes on a grand adventure. There ends up being a war of sorts between the humans and the aliens. And then they end up in court in the planet that the aliens come from. And it gets really tedious really fast, and this book could have been 500 pages and covered everything it needed to do and would have been readable. At 1,050 pages, it was a bit long. And it did kind of lose its thread after a while. At first, there was definitely a plot and a set of situations that they're dealing with, and it made sense. It's all over the place after about halfway through. And it's not like it's Scientology 101 or anything like that. You're not going to get indoctrinated by reading this book. It's just a book that needed a lot of editing. The language is fine, but the story needs serious tightening. But for my purposes, it's 1,050 pages. And I made through all of the book. I pulled up the audiobook so that when I wasn't reading it in print, I could listen to it so that I could get through it. Same thing for Shogun, actually. It was a tandem... we're not calling it tandem read. Immersion reading, except I wasn't doing it at the same time, but kind of switching off to when my eyes got tired and that kind of thing. So yeah, I finished this book as well. So 2,000 some pages in about 48 hours. It was insane. I was exhausted, but I did it. So yeah, this one also got 50 points for being sci-fi, which bumped the points up to 1,100 points, added to my 2,410 and 20 points. That was a really good leg. So yeah, I didn't mind that at all, and we won leg 6. Not a big surprise, because I was not the only one milking this opportunity for everything it was worth. It took a lot of energy, and yes, I was exhausted, but it was so totally worth it, because then we got another advantage for leg 7. But leg 6, I did actually squeeze in some sightseeing as well. By this point in the month, I was starting to get a lot of books that I'd started, but just hadn't finished in time for whatever it was that I was trying to use them for. So a lot of the books I finished for sightseeing from this point on were not books that I literally started during that leg. I read a lot of books simultaneously, where I'll get in the mood for a different sort of feel, and so I'll pick up a different book and just go back and forth. So that really helped with all this. And there were a lot of books that were just slightly too long to use for FaceOff that I kind of stored in a list for using for sightseeing. So a lot of these were from books that I chose not to use for FaceOff. I did Islands of Space by John W. Carpenter. No, Campbell. John W. Campbell. Carpenter is later. That was for an odd number of pages. It's amazing how many of the books I was looking at don't have an odd number of pages. It's not a category I think of very often. But that one did. It was fun. Just hard sci-fi. 1000 Degrees Below Zero by Murray Leinster. This one was a longer novella and has a number in the title. So that was, both of those were 100-point sightseeing prompts. And also a book on my TBR for more than a year. I've been meaning to get to Roger Zelazny's books. So I looked on the list of the books that I had meant to be reading by Zelazny and found one that wasn't terribly long and looked fun. So I read Damnation Alley by Roger Zelazny, which was fun. I have been really enjoying his books. And there are several more that I worked into prompts later. So definitely recommend that author if you like kind of quirky sci-fi fantasy blends. He does a lot of books where you can't really peg them to a classic genre, but they'll have elements of stuff. So very creative, lots of really fun stories. I did The Voyage of the Space Beagle by A.E. Van Vogt for a book with an illustration on the cover. And The Mad Planet by Murray Leinster, which has an animal on the cover. The Beastmaster's Circus by Andre Norton for a book with all 5 vowels on the cover. That one was for a 500-point prompt. And Dune Messiah, which has foiling on the cover. So I know that a lot of people, their foiling on the cover are those really fancy special editions that cost more than my entire book budget for the year. No, the library here doesn't get those either. But foiling on the cover is all it says. It does not say fancy, expensive special editions like what people buy now in subscriptions. And that is definitely foil. As a matter of fact, if you get it humid and too warm, the foiling would peel off. So, yay, Dune Messiah worked for something. I was going to use it for a city prompt, but it's not very fat, so it worked really well as that. And then we got on to the 7th leg. And I actually did finish Dune Messiah last, I believe. Moving into leg 7. So leg 7, I know we won leg 6, and then we went into leg 7, and we were exhausted because we had to do the U-turn. So we lost leg 7, which had some slight consequences for the next leg, but not as impactful as the previous one. Anyway, leg 7, we're going to Seoul. So heading to Korea. Yay. Not a very long trip, so I'd imagine that, walking would still be a problem. Because I did walk for this leg, which is what a lot of us ended up doing. I think we were just burned out for this little bit, and that did not help our winning or not winning. But I walked. I used a 233-page The Story of Martha by Dan Abnett. That there. Which I'd been trying to figure out what to use. And here's the source of light. is a center of a galaxy. So lots and lots of light generation in there. So then I did a lot of sightseeing. By this point, I was also starting to look at how I was going to strategically finish all the sightseeing so that I could start over. So I finished for 500 points the Goodall Operation by James L. Cambion. This one has Goodall, the mathematician, in the title, so it has a name in the title. Just hard sci-fi. That one actually, it was fun while I read it, but not nearly as memorable as some others that came along. But I do remember bits of scenes and things still. So a lot of the sci-fi from this point onward kind of runs together because I was doing a lot of hardcore classic sci-fi all at once. I did The Time of the Transference by Alan Dean Foster, which is another crossover. In the world that we start out in, there's talking animals and there's tech, but it's almost fantasy tech, but not to the extent that it feels like you're reading a fantasy. It's kind of hard to describe, but when you're reading a fantasy novel that's genre fantasy, there's a feel to it. And it's not a surprise when we find out that this is an alternate dimension or something like that, and they cross over into our world. Because it's that kind of book. Like, yeah, it's going to happen. And it's done by technology, not by magic. So there is magic in this one, though. So it is a crossover. And I don't remember if I claimed for sci-fi in this one or not. That was one where it was right in that gray area. Kind of depends on how you're feeling at the time, whether it's sci-fi or not. So I may not have claimed for that one. And then I did Bring Me the Head of Prince Charming by Zelazny. That one was for a retelling. It was really funny. Yeah. I did If At Faust You Don't Succeed by Zelazny and Peter Sheckley. That one was for 2 or more authors. Those actually, both of them could be interchangeable, so as far as what I submitted for what, I did both of those in the same evening. So I don't actually remember if I ended up submitting those in that order or the other way around. But yeah, the Bring Me the Head of Prince Charming also has a second author. I just didn't jot it in my notes. But it was not Sheckley, so one of the other ones. A lot of the classic sci-fi and sci-fantasy have 2 authors. So, yeah. Now that I think about it, I don't remember the name of that other author. But anyway, they're both really fun. And they're both retellings. So yeah. Bringing Me the Head of Prince Charming, demons are recreating Sleeping Beauty as a set piece sort of performance. And it doesn't go very well. If At Faust You Don't Succeed is a retelling of Faust by that one German author. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so those are both fun. And then I did A Night in Lonesome October, also by Zelazny. That one was just Zelazny. And I believe I did log that one for fantasy only. That was a little bit too much on the fantasy side to be both. But that one was for a book with a romance. Somebody from the dark side and somebody from the light side fall in love while prepping for All Hallows Eve. And one side is trying to open the gateway for the old gods to come back, and the other side is trying to close the gateway or keep it closed. And then I did This will be the last book for this video. This is How You Lose the Time War. This one was for the prompt of a Bookstagram recommendation, which I can't actually do much with Instagram on my computer. It doesn't always even open things correctly because I don't have a smartphone. So I looked up, Googled popular books on Bookstagram and looked through the options, and this one was obvious. Everybody's been talking about it. If I hadn't used it for that, I could have used it for a book Brie gave 5 stars to, but I'm pretty sure I kept it at the Bookstagram because that's what I picked it for and put it on hold and checked it out for. But yeah, so that got me to the end of leg 7 and the end of this third of my wrap up for the readathon. So I'm gonna wrap up this video and let it upload and type up the description, which takes a long time because I've been trying to put all the names of the books and the authors and what prompts they were for and how many points they were, and yeah, so I'll get that all done and this one will go up, and my guess is that the third book or the third video will go up tonight. You can tell the sun's been going down, so the next one in order will be at night. The lighting will change again, but I want to get these done because I need to move on to the tarot readathon and, you know, put this behind me and move on. So I will catch you guys in the next video. As before, if you have been doing a wrap-up video or videos for June, let me know so I can see how you've done now that we're not spilling any, you know, secrets that we shouldn't be letting anybody in on. Yeah. Now we can tell everybody what happened and why, and like, why was Team Sci-Fi so stressed in leg 6? Because we lost leg 5 and had the U-turn, and so we had a penalty and the U-turn at the same time. This is why Team Sci-Fi was hurting so much in leg 6. And this is also why we won leg 6, because we got to do the U-turn. So yeah, it all does add up. So I'll catch you guys in the next video, and happy reading, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye.